Hello and welcome to the show. I'm Peter Whittle. Now, I'm delighted that my guest this week is Sunil Sharma. You might know him as a commentator for channels like GB News and Talk TV. He's becoming much more prominent recently. He's also the host of the podcast Rational Voices. Welcome, Sunil.
Thank you, Peter.
Now, I want to talk about your domestic arrangements first, because you've just moved, you've left the UK and you've gone to Dubai. This is something that people are thinking about more and more, at least if you look at social media. Where do they go in the world? Why did you go?
I think for me, look, it was quite an easy move. I had already done some work in the Middle East, so it was quite easy for me to move. And I kind of made the decision early last year, around January time, so it was still the Conservative government. It became very clear that Labour were going to win. But regardless of the election result, I pretty much was quite clear in my head that I didn't want to be in the UK. Being reasonably young-ish, it felt like a good opportunity to leave the country whilst I don't have much responsibilities. I don't have children. Yeah. So that definitely made it easier. And there is no doubt the sort of decline in the UK, I think general West played a massive part as well. I'm born here. My parents came here very young. I feel very patriotic towards this country. My dad served as local councillor. My mum worked for the NHS. So like we've got quite a very born in a very British environment.
Yeah.
And so for me, it was, despite all of that, it was a very easy, straightforward decision. Once it became clear I've got an opportunity to go there, pay a lot less tax, be a lot safer, start a kind of new life-ish there. And aside from the emotive feeling of being born here and having that British feeling, there was no real hesitation.
All right. So do you find that a lot of people in Dubai done the same thing?
For sure.
Is there an expat thing going on there?
Yeah, definitely. There's lots of Brits, Europeans. There's so many people. Like, you know, every time I was so surprised when I moved, the amount of people that I knew had already moved. I didn't realize they had moved, but that were friends or, you know, associates. And the amount of people who have said to me that my fellow Brits here from different ethnicities or just normal white Brits who are saying that they want to leave the country. So it's definitely a reoccurring theme. I think it makes it easier when you're obviously naturally a bit younger. But even that said, I think there is definitely that kind of sense of that kind of negativity in Britain at the moment, and generally the West, maybe aside from America now. So I think that's definitely adding to it.
Hello. Please excuse this brief interruption, but I'd be really grateful if you could please hit the subscribe button and subscribe to our channel. Our mission is vitally important, and we must grow this channel to ensure that our content reaches the biggest possible audience. The best way to do this is for you to subscribe. It's totally free. And in addition to subscribing, if you're able to donate or join our membership scheme, please click on the link in the description or visit our website, newcultureforum.org.uk. We've got great plans ahead, but we can't do it without your support. From only £4 per month, you'll receive a range of perks and benefits, including exclusive content. Thank you. When you say negativity, of course, we all know what you mean. We major in it on the channel, it seems sometimes. But do you think it's terminal?
I look at Britain's history and I like to think it's not terminal. I think things will probably get worse, I think, as time carries on. But I'm optimistic that there will be a change. I'm sure sooner or later British people will have had enough of this and stand up against it. I think that requires a silent majority to stop being silent, essentially. And I think one of the not so nice things that's going on in Britain is the sort of the decline of merit. Merit, yeah. So this, you know, what's been amazing about Britain is you can come to this country, be born here, whatever your social class, whatever your economic class, you can climb up the ladder based on merit. And I think that's been one of the best things in the United Kingdom. I think that's gone out the window now, whether it be the white privilege whether it be with BLM, LGBTQ plus, all these different groups now. And I think that is really such a horrible thing to see for this country.
Do you think, though, Sunil, that whole thing has peaked? There's a lot of talk about, particularly since Trump was elected, that essentially we're over the worst of it. Are we?
I think, I'm not sure if it's peaked, but I think there will be more and more people talking out against it. I think now that Trump's won, I think there'll be a lot of silent people who have now will feel the courage to speak out against it. I think the big difference in the United States of America, I think they're probably a bit more vocal than we can sometimes be in Britain. I think we're naturally a bit more politer, and we aren't necessarily as outlandish as Americans. And I think as time goes on, I do expect this to be there to be a turning, and maybe Trump is that catalyst for the United Kingdom. I would prefer it to come from the United Kingdom, for somebody within our whether it be our government and in these sort of senior positions to come out and really go against it. I just find that very hard to see right now, because even the so-called more conservative parties, I think once they come into this bubble of London, Westminster, it seems as almost if they lose the reality of the rest of the country. And I think that's been a big problem for a long time. And so that's kind of my concern at the moment. We could talk about Reform, Conservative, and sometimes I feel once they get entrenched in this London bubble, trying to win votes, if you like, I think they almost lose their actual core base of voters who want pretty basic things.
Do you think that's happening with the Conservatives and Reform then?
I think Reform's a really hard one, because, Reform, of course, they have old legacies in previous parties, but they are still such a very young party in the sense of, I look at them almost like a startup party. So I think they're going to have teething problems, they're going to make mistakes, and I think you almost have to kind of make allowances for that, because they're such a young group of people. So when I say, not by age, but just being a party. So at the moment, I don't see it, but I'm worried that it could happen. And that for me is something that I hope doesn't. And I really want Reform in some ways. I would love the two parties to somehow unite, and that to be to be a Conservative one ticket. But again, for that to happen, I think the Conservative Party really needs to learn from the mistakes of the past and stop trying to justify the past and just hold your hands up. There's some serious mistakes made. It's okay. You're going to learn from it and move forward.
Thing is with the Tories is that it isn't just about justifying the past, is it? It's also that the actual personnel seem to have changed hugely. Or should I say, not just even the MPs, although that has happened, but also the people at the headquarters.
Well, I think they've maybe lost touch of their actual members, the root base of people who would be there campaigning, the people who have been loyalists to his party for so long. I'm so shocked since even going to Dubai in the last few months. It seems like every week I know people, a lot of people who are switching their alliances, who I would never have presumed. My dad was a Conservative councillor when I was 13, and so that's 20 years I've essentially been involved with the party, and I've been shocked with the amount of people I know who have switched to the Reform side. And I think unless the Conservative Party really has a sit down, maybe with the members, with the people that have kind of built this party in some ways, has that open conversation, I think they may risk just being continued to bleed out, and I think that's concerning.
You mentioned there about your father being a councillor in Windsor and Maidenhead, the first immigrant councillor?
Yeah, in Windsor and Maidenhead for the Conservatives.
Right. So you've been interested in politics since you were, a teenager?
Yeah.
Electoral politics? I mean, would you stand for?
But not anytime soon. I think.
No.
I look. I like the idea of making money before politics rather than trying to make money through politics. Right. Ask me in 15, 20 years when I've hopefully been successful in my career, then maybe. Yeah. I have, as of now, no interest in doing it. I would love to. There's no doubt. I would absolutely love to. I'd love to serve my country 100%. But I would want to do that with a bit more freedom. I'd want to do that knowing that I've accumulated some wealth, that I've done the things that I want to do in my personal life with wife, kids, whatever. And then, for sure, I would 100% want to be interested in doing it. But I think right now my priorities are not quite there.
Do you say that you grew up being patriotic, but we don't stop necessarily being patriotic. Do you think it is harder to be patriotic now?
I think what's really interesting is there's almost a group of people. I used to think maybe I was unique in this case, but I don't think I am. I think there's a lot of product of immigrants who are deeply patriotic about Britain. And I think the reason is they can see what life could have been like. So both my parents came from India, both came in pretty poor conditions, very bad economic, almost close to poverty in India, and same when they came to UK. And so when you see them being able to climb their different ladders just through pretty much just working hard, nothing else, it makes me being born makes me feel, wow, this country is incredible, because I'd be reminded by my parents that, you can do this in the United Kingdom. You can actually work hard, get a job, climb up the ladder, one day buy a house, one day be successful, all this sort of stuff. And it's 100% harder now than it was maybe then, but it's still possible. In a lot of countries right now, that's not possible, depending on what maybe religious group you belong to, depending on where you're born. It makes I think an even bigger impact outside of Britain. So I think I was maybe like many product of immigrants. We were told you are lucky to be here. You're actually lucky to be born in the United Kingdom, where it's safe, it's clean, it's you're not worried of threat of war. You're not worried about putting food on the table. You have an NHS, a healthcare. So I was routinely reminded by my parents that you are very lucky to be here. You should feel very proud to be here. You obviously got Indian heritage, you're Hindu, all this sort of stuff, but you're British. You're going to wear Western clothing. You're going to be British, and this is your country, and you have a duty to serve. You have a duty to get a job. You have a duty to get educated, and all this sort of. So I think there's lots of people like me. I think that's why we maybe get really frustrated at what's going on in Britain now, because we can kind of see what life could be like. And when you see where Britain's heading, it's really sad, because I'm not sure if people like my parents would now come to Britain or would look at Britain as a place to come. I'm not sure the people coming to this country now are sitting here thinking, I want to come, I want to work hard, I want the opportunity to work hard, I want the opportunity to build a future for my kids, and I want us to push up. I'm not sure if those people coming in right now are thinking that, and I'm not sure they come there with this pride of being like, wow, I'm in Britain, this is amazing. I get freedom, I get cultural freedom, religious freedom. I get the opportunity to climb up the ladder. I get the opportunity to do all these amazing things, and I think that's really concerning.
Yes, but you see, the point is that what you've been describing there is integration. I would say, people integrating well. Everything changed, did it not, around the mid-90s? You can literally pinpoint it, 1997 with Blair. So now, yes, I would agree with you. I think it would be fantasy to say that people coming in now, and at the level of the numbers coming in now, do actually want to integrate and do actually see coming to Britain as being kind of an enormous advantage for them. And I think that you're seeing it being played out, aren't you? Particularly, obviously, there are religious differences. You're a Hindu family, aren't you? You're a Hindu family. And, what is worrying is that we're now seeing in places like Birmingham, happened last year, this kind of, internecine war between Muslims and Hindus as well.
Well, I just think when you bring in the numbers that we're bringing in, the question is for these people, why do they need to integrate? Right? Because they're coming in such masses with their own groups, so there's no need to integrate. Okay, my parents came with the idea of, we're lucky to be in Britain, we're going to make the most of Britain, all those things. But there's probably another group of people that came with not such an amazing view of Britain, but because they're in less numbers, they're forced to integrate. They are forced, whether they like it or not, to be a part of British values and customs. Whereas now, there's no need to integrate. You're going to come with thousands of people. You have areas of, like you said, Birmingham, London, where there is no need to remotely climatize, integrate, adjust, whatever. So why would you? And I think we're making it easier, I think, especially in London with our mayor, to not allow any integration. And I think you're seeing the decline of good British values. And I think that's really, we asked at the start why, one of the reasons why I've left Britain and why I have no, I had no hesitation, is because British people, it feels like, are not protecting British values, or it just seems like we're allowing as a country just to be in decline. We're allowing the destruction of the British core principles and values. And so now it's a bit like, well, what's left? I am optimistic because I think, things will get maybe a bit worse, and I do think this is cyclical, and I do think that this will change. And I think the silent majority will rise up and go against this. But I think as of now, it's really just worrying times.
You mentioned there about British values. There's a big argument going on, and it can seem rather sort of pedantic and semantic. But the idea of values, the way that they've actually now been described, very nebulous, free speech, tolerance, all of this. What strikes me about what you said is that your feeling of being British seems to have derived also from history.
Yeah.
Which, you see, that to me is much more the thing. A sense of kind of background, a sense of a shared history, a story. These things are far more important, because most people are going to sign up to a set of kind of values as well.
Yeah.
However, having said that, I think your argument still stands. Are people even protecting those things?
Yeah.
Are they protecting the history? I know you've spoken a lot about the British Empire, haven't you?
Yeah.
These things are under huge attack all the time, are they not?
I mean, the British Empire stuff is just bizarre. If you compare the British Empire to any other empire, it's the most progressive empire in history. Like, this is to abolish slavery, to bring democracy to the world, to improve education, to do what the British Empire did. In terms of other empires, it is the most progressive by far. I think it's really bizarre that in the people who criticize the British Empire the most, or the people who want to rewrite the history and make it all negative, it's British people. You go outside of Britain, yes, I'm sure there are some people who are going to maybe grift and try and take advantage of some of the history, but the overwhelmingly majority will just accept that was a period in history, and we know British empires are bad and they shouldn't exist now, but they would not be sitting there talking about it as much as we do. I think if you look at what happened, I'll give the example of India, where India would have the example of widow burning, where if a husband dies, during when they're getting cremated and the wife is still alive, the wife gets thrown into the fire.
Yes.
British Empire abolished that. They stopped that. So you've got to be fair, is my point on the empire, which is, of course, empire shouldn't exist in 2025, but at the same time, if you're going to compare the empire, compare it to other empires, and if you compare it to other empires, British Empire is the most progressive. So I think that's something we should be very proud of, and we shouldn't necessarily continue to look at it negativity. And what's even more crazy about some of this sort of stuff when we talk about the empire, the British Empire abolished slavery. You could argue there are countries, e.g. China, that are practicing something very close to slavery.
Oh, yes.
And we will barely ever talk about that here in the United Kingdom, but we will constantly talk about something that we did 60, 70, 80 years ago, and we won't even talk about the fact that we abolished it, which is, to me, just crazy.
Yes, or it's always about the transatlantic slave trade, never about slavery's been around for thousands of years, actually, long before that. But you see I know you're not a politician, you're a commentator, but how does one roll this back? So you mentioned there, for example, about integration. It's all part of the same thing we're talking about. What would you do, in terms of immigration now? When your parents came, as I said, up until the 90s, you're talking net 50,000 people, pretty civilized, I'd say, for any country, fine, right? Now we're talking, close to 1 million people or whatever. Population going to hugely go. What should happen, do you think, Sunil?
Well, I think that going back 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago, we we had labor shortages, so we relaxed the borders. Right now, we don't have labor shortages. We've got the biggest problem. I think one of the big problems in the UK at the moment is there's a lot of people in this country that are not working. I know they keep showing the unemployment rate and all this sort of stuff, but if you're not even trying to get a job, you're not included as part of that rate. So I think there's a lot of people in this country not working. I think some of the mental health stuff has been a bit exploited as well, where people are not working and able to find that.
When you say that, you mean it's like basically they've pathologized just feeling a bit lousy, you mean, one day? Yeah.
And look, I think it's great that we have a mental health focus now, because I think it's been, ignored for a long time. But there's a big difference between having a mental health issue and having mental well-being issues. And you could argue most of us throughout our lifetimes will have some mental well-being issues at some times, whether it's a break.
Part of being human, isn't it?
Exactly. And I think we've kind of confused the two between mental well-being and mental health. And I think we're a bit unsure on what to do there. But so anyway, there's a lot of people in this country who are not working. We need to get those people to work, and they need to feel the incentive to work, one. And I think one of the ways the incentives, I think the taxes in this country are ridiculous. That's one. And then there's the other more, maybe the more stick approach, which is reduced benefits than the amount they're getting right now. And I think a combo of the two would make a big difference. I think with immigration, I think we really need to just almost rewrite the book on that, because I think rather than trying to get low-skilled workers from across into this country, we should be getting the people who are not working currently into those roles. I think we should have the university system now where essentially every single person has to go to university. I think it's just bizarre and not needed. We should scrap that now in sense of you shouldn't have to go to university to get a job. You don't need to go to university to get most jobs. I think that would help with the labour shortage. I think you should be forcing companies in this country to employ British people, whether it's incentivizing them. I think that there's lots of things. I don't think there's an overnight fix, but there are lots of easy things that could be done in a very short space of time. And I think you'd see the results. I think it would take a long time, but you'd see some results pretty quickly. But I think closing borders is a very easy thing to do. Saying that you have to speak English, you can make it very difficult, right? You have to speak English to come in this country. Okay, you know what? After 6 months or so, you know what? Actually, maybe we can relax that a little bit. I don't think we do, but let's see what the stats and data show. But I think that's an easy one. I think you do that straight away. I think that would stop. I don't have all the answers, but I think some of this stuff is pretty self-explanatory.
Citizenship maybe shouldn't be such a disposable thing either. I think maybe people should wait longer to become citizens or whatever. I wanted to ask you something which has really been dominating the social media quite a lot recently. And it's discussion about what is English. Is there such a thing as English ethnicity? What is the difference between that and being British? And it was to a large extent inspired by a discussion that Fraser Nelson, who was the editor of The Spectator, had on trigonometry. And he more or less sort of denied that there was an English ethnicity. What's your view on that? Do you think that there are, ethnically English people, or do you think he's wrong?
I think he's wrong. Ethnically, I'm Indian, right? I'm brown. I've got a history.
Yes, the whole point is, this is why I want to ask something. It's very interesting coming from you. Is that, you're born and bred here, educated here. Your parents weren't, but, you were. But do you see yourself, would you characterize yourself, therefore, as being British, but not English, or what?
I would classify myself British. That is what I would say, British. Right. I feel English. Whether I am ethically English is maybe not true. Culturally English. I think I feel all those culturally English, values English. I feel all those things. If the question is purely on ethnicity, then probably not. I'm not, white. I'm not. My heritage is different. That doesn't mean I'm any less loyal to England than I think I'd argue more loyal to England than a lot of people in this country. But ethnicity-wise, then that's a different question. So I can totally understand the point of, if you're not. English does have its ethnicity, and I don't think necessarily that if what Constantine said don't think that's remotely racist. I think that is in the very...
No,
Yeah.
I mean, I found it was extraordinary because in that particular exchange, did you see it? Actually?
Yeah.
You know, he seemed sort of exasperated. They were talking about Rishi Sunak.
Yeah.
And he seemed exasperated at what Fraser Nelson was saying. And so, and it's interesting, and I thought, why does no one ask Rishi Sunak what he thinks?
Yeah.
You know, or for that matter, you know, friends of mine, non-white friends of mine, same thing. They're very clear about it. Well, no, of course not. You know,
Yeah.
I might be totally English culturally or whatever, or British, but obviously not ethnically so. But it's interesting, isn't it, that Fraser Nelson would sort of almost deny that there even exists an English ethnicity, which is, I think, what he was sort of saying.
And I think that's the sad, one of the sad realities of this. And we keep doing this with Britain, England, where we just want to denounce everything about this country. Either talk it down.
He's a conservative.
I think a conservative is
No, I mean, like one of the well, you know, I say the editor of the Spectator is a pretty strong, important figure for the Tory party.
I think it's just changed. I think you could argue a lot what's happened in the last few years. What is conservative about it? Like these tax levels, there's nothing conservative about that. You could argue immigration, there's nothing conservative about that. Yeah. I know they would argue a lot of the stuff, you know, it was difficult with civil servants and all this sort of stuff. And I do get that. But I think that whole conservative right-left thing has really been skewed drastically now. Right. And I think what the left have done really well is that they've reprogrammed anything that's even moderately centre as far right, right wing. And I think, unfortunately, what conservatives should have done is called out as you're being stupid. That's not the case. But I think instead they kind of pandered to that. Yes. And I think that was I think it's each leader has done that. Maybe arguably the only one that didn't, Liz Truss, and this was the result of her. And she was probably the only one that didn't really pander to that. And I think everyone else that's pretty much has. And I think that's the reality of this new right and left. I think it's just been all reprogrammed. A lot of the stuff, and that's why it's interesting with a lot of the reform memberships. So many of them come from the Labour Party or ex-Labour members.
Yes.
And you wouldn't consider them anything remotely as far right. But even a basic common sense stuff like saying stuff like we should control our borders is now considered more of a far right or right wing thing, which is something Obama said when he got elected.
Yes, no, it is quite extraordinary how they have been very successful. We go from being left, centre left, and then suddenly far right. It's like this whole bit has suddenly disappeared or been made to disappear. You mentioned there that, you know, you wouldn't want to bring kids up here at the moment when you have kids. But do you think we're going to move to a time maybe where when you have those kids, would you want them educated in our state system, you know, as it stands? And also, for that matter, would you sort of encourage them still to go to university in Britain, I mean?
So I want to have kids in Britain. I want them. I want future kids. I want them to be born in the United Kingdom. And I think maybe it's history, maybe it's emotive for me. I would want my children 100% to be raised in the United Kingdom. It's all hypothetical. When they're born, will I think I want to do what's best for them as opposed to my patriotism and my emotive love for Britain and my motive? Then that's a different question. I think that's a question I only know when I actually have children. But for me, I would really now have real concerns about raising them up in Britain.
Yes.
Which I would never have thought. I felt so lucky to be born in Britain as a child. Okay, that it's not, you didn't grow up in the greatest of greatest conditions, but I felt so lucky to be born here. I felt like this was, I never at any point sat there and thought maybe life would be better elsewhere, or I don't feel safe, or I felt very, very fortunate. I'm not sure if kids now being born feel the same way. And in some of their cases, it's kind of understandable with what they're seeing around them. And there's a reason why teenagers some of them are leaning more and more to dictatorship style of leaderships, that they're more and more moving to the left because they've seen how ineffective our leaders have been. But what I would say is that's more our leaders have been ineffective, not our system, not our democratic system. But naturally, if you're younger, you probably won't make that correlation straight away. So I I'm optimistic that as time goes on, we're going to see this kind of revolution, whether it be with, I think we're starting that now where we can now openly say there's two genders and you're not going to get massive pushback. And so I'm optimistic with what's happening in America, Trump to kind of inspire that here. And it's fascinating with Trump, although I think polling shows him, as much as you can trust polls, that he's not that liked in Britain. His policies are very much liked in Britain. So I think with that in mind, it fills me with optimism. I just feel right now this dark period, and you could argue it's been going on for a while, and I think it's just now gone it's just skyrocketed even more with Sir Keir Starmer. I feel like this period is a really doomy and gloom period.
Yes, I think with Trump, you're quite right. If you present the policies, someone did recently, to most people, they say, oh yes, I agree with them. As soon as you put the name Trump with them, they go off the whole thing. I've never been to Dubai, but I wonder, is there a sense in which it is, it's not comparable to, say, like one of our cities, really, of course it's not. But essentially, I was thinking, is there a sense in which it is a more dynamic, obviously, but also safer society than ours? I mean, it knows what it is what I think I'm getting at as a place.
100%. I feel, I'll give you a little story. I've got a few friends there, and I've been adjusting to, going to places and having my phone on the table. And as soon as I get up, I put it in my pocket where I'm going to the loo, wherever. I put it straight in my pocket, and then I'll go wherever. And, my friends will say, Snil, you can relax. Like, you don't have to keep everything around you as tight as you are, and whatever the case. I was in a pub in London end of last week, maybe where your mug is, just over there. I had my phone there, went to the bar to order a pint. Waitress comes over, picks up my phone, gives it to me. It says, please, as in, keep your phone on you. Somebody could go steal it. Yeah. And I remember thinking, wow, this is just absurd. I'm in the city of London. I'm in Bank, St. Paul's, one of the nicer areas, whatever you want to call it. And you're telling me to pick up my phone when I can see it just there. So there is that feeling. So that's massive safety. I think it's hard to compare, right? Because
of course,
the things are different there.
But I mean, I noticed at the very beginning when we started talking about this that did you not include European cities generally at the moment in the same way?
I mean, the amount of Europeans in Dubai who are looking to come to Dubai is a high amount, and I think there is that disillusionment. I think what you said there, which is perfect, they know what they are and you kind of abide by it, and so there may be things you like, maybe things you don't like, but they're very clear in terms of their rules and principles, and you kind of obey by it. And I think here, we're not the same. We're not run by solely a monarchy. We're a bit different. So, but I think that kind of values is really lost at the moment. And I think anyone that remotely speaks about it is shut down. I think it's sometimes a bit easier for me to speak about by simply not being white. So straight away, you can't throw white privilege or being racist and all this sort of stuff. So it makes it slightly easier. But other than that, I think it's if you're somebody over the age of 40, 50, white in this country, I think it's very hard to speak. And I think the reason they don't want to speak is because they will get labeled these tags straight off the bat. And so I think I'm hopeful those people will speak and will go from being the silent majority to being the rational majority, which they are. And I think I'm hopeful that will happen.
I'm hopeful. I think at the moment this is something that preoccupies me an awful lot, is working out whether people are raging in silence or whether they're indifferent. And part of me, when I say indifferent, that they don't quite care enough. Because you said at the beginning, people don't seem to be that worried about protecting these things.
Yeah.
And it's making people concerned about it and making them want to protect these things, I think, is most important. Well, look, Sunil, thank you very much. By the way, how can people see your podcast? Presumably it's YouTube, is it? Or
Yeah,
what?
YouTube, Spotify, just Apple Music, all the different.
So you do this
platforms.
in Dubai now?
Do this in Dubai, yeah. Occasionally, when I'm ever in Britain, I do it in Britain too. So like I record from here. So yeah, just I think easiest way is all on my Twitter handle, X handle even.
What is your Twitter handle?
At Sunil Sharma UK.
Okay, well, we'll put all this sort of under the video. We have members and they get exclusive content. So would you just stay with us after this? But in the meantime, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Sunil. That was interesting. We shall see you next week. And in the meantime, have a good week, won't you? Bye. Our mission at the New Culture Forum is and always has been to defend and celebrate Britain's history, culture, and its people, and indeed Western civilization, at a time when both are under sustained attack. We have grown from small beginnings to become the country's most influential right-leaning cultural think tank. Our content is watched and read by some of Britain's most influential political figures. But now, we need your help. If you believe in what we do, then please do become a member. For as little as £4 a month, you can make a vital contribution to what we do. As a member of the NCF family, you will help ensure that we can continue to produce quality content online, such as our 3 weekly programs, Whittle, which is our flagship interview show, Newspeak, our panel discussion show, and Deprogrammed, which is targeted at Britain's youth. As you probably know, in addition, we produce important documentaries, such as our critically acclaimed 6-part series, The West, a stunning celebration of the history and genius of Western civilization, and our ongoing documentary series, Heresies, with hard-hitting episodes tackling subjects such as immigration, gender ideology, and BBC bias. But the New Culture Forum is much more than a YouTube channel. We don't just complain about Britain as it is, we provide real solutions and clear policies on how we can push back against the madness and restore sanity to this nation. Our presenters are now highly sought after and have become familiar faces across the media. Our prestigious annual Smith Lecture and our regional and indeed national conferences have attracted world-class speakers. Perhaps most importantly, we are the only organisation on the right of politics that has launched a national movement without actually being a political party. And uniquely, through our NCF Locals programme, we've established some 30 active branches in towns and cities right across the nation, from Edinburgh to Exeter, and with many more on the way. We're very proud of what we've achieved, and our members have made it possible. In return, our members receive access to exclusive content, invitations to private events, free or discounted tickets to our conferences and lectures, free copies of our books, and much more. I very much hope that you'll join us too by clicking the link in the description or going to our website, newcultureforum.org.uk. Now is the time that we need your help. Thank you.